So OpenAI recently announced ChatGPT GPTs.
GPTs are tailored versions of ChatGPT for a specific purpose.
There are thousands of ways in which this new feature by OpenAI can be used. So in this video, we'll build our very own ChatGPT GPT. The first GPT which we'll be building will be a physics teacher who will be helping us with all of our physics queries. And for the next GPT, we'll be doing something even more interesting. I'll be giving all of my information from my LinkedIn profile and from my GitHub profile, and then I'll be asking it a few questions and we'll see if it is able to answer properly or not. So if you're new to this channel, my name is Mohammed Shahrukh and I make videos on coding and AI and teach you how you can build amazing stuffs using it. So if you enjoy such content, hit the subscribe button. So if ChatGPT GPTs are a tailored version of ChatGPT, what are assistants? Well, to create an agent-like experience like a GPT into our own apps, OpenAI has given us the Assistants API. So using the Assistants API, you create an assistant. Just the way you create a GPT on the ChatGPT's website, you would create an assistant when you are developing your app. You can think of an assistant as an entity that has instructions. And in the instructions, you can specify the task that the assistant would be performing. So for example, in the instructions, you can specify that you are a maths teacher, your job is to answer math queries. Or you can specify you are an expert copywriter, your job is to write beautiful Instagram captions. Assistants can also leverage the OpenAI models, so you can either use GPT 3.5 or GPT 4 or any other model of your choice. Assistants also have access to tools like Code Interpreter, using which you can read, understand, and write code. It also has access to tools like Retrieval, using which you can retrieve information from documents like PDF or text files. It also has access to function calling, which I'll be covering in the future videos. So now let's get started and let's create our very own assistant on the OpenAI's website. So head over to platform.openai.com/assistants. So this is where you can create your assistants. Now, normally you would create an assistant for your application using the Assistants API. But for this video, we'll be doing it via this UI so that I can explain to you the underlying concepts like what are messages, what are threads, and what are tools like Retrieval and Code Interpreter. So let's start. So first of all, we'll give a name to our assistant. I'll call it Physics Tutor. Next, we'll give instructions to our assistant. I'll just write you are a physics tutor. Your job is to explain concepts of physics in simple language. And the model which I'll be using over here is GPT 3.5 Turbo. Next, you can enable tools for your assistant. Now, this one is for function calling. We'll be understanding more about function calling in the future videos. And Code Interpreter, if your assistant will be writing code or understanding code, then you can enable this one. And Retrieval is when your assistant would be retrieving information from files. So as you can see that this is disabled over here. Now to enable it, I'll have to choose some other model. So let's choose this one. And then you can see that Retrieval is activated. So for this simple assistant, we don't need any of these tools. This will be just a simple physics tutor. So I'll just hit save. So now you can see that our assistant is created. And next what we'll do is that we'll just test this assistant. Now we are here in the playground. Over here, we can give a prompt to our assistant. I'll just ask, explain to me theory of relativity in 2 sentences. So let's hit run. So you can see that we have got a response from our physics tutor assistant. And also there are a few logs that are generated. First one being create a thread. So what is a thread? The thread represents a conversation and all the messages goes into a thread. And there are no size limits to threads. That means you can put as many messages as you want into a thread. But there is a catch. The assistants make sure that all your messages remain within the context window. And if it exceeds the context window, it will do some optimization techniques like truncation. Now in truncation, your oldest message would be deleted and only the recent ones will be sent to the OpenAI API call. There's another thing you should note when you are using the Assistant API. And that is that when you use the Assistant API, you no longer have that control of the number of input tokens that are sent to the model in a single API call. But the good thing is that you no longer need to worry about managing your messages within the context window, as the Assistant's API will take care of that. So next line in the log is the add message. So add message basically adds a message to the thread. Now a message can be a single text or it can be a file as well. So when you have added all the messages to your thread, you can run the thread. Now when the thread is running, it goes through certain steps, like the first one being queued, and then it is in progress, and then it is completed. So when the thread is completed, then you can finally see the response from the assistant. So that's what this logs basically means. As you can see in the logs that there are few calls for getting the status of the run. So as you can see in the response, it is completed. So this indicates that the thread is completed and you can finally see the response in the messages. So this call over here gets all the messages of the thread. And if you see, the most recent object would contain the response. So this is nothing but the response. So now you understand what are threads, what are messages, and what running a thread means. So now let's move on to the next example, where we'll be using the retrieval tool of the Assistant's API. So for the next one, I have two files ready. Earlier, I was planning to use data from my LinkedIn account, but then I thought of using my resume itself. And the other file which I have is a PDF of my GitHub profile. So let's create a new assistant. So let's give our new assistant a name. I'll call it Info Retriever, because it is retrieving information from my resume and from my GitHub profile. And in the instructions, I'll write your job is to retrieve information from uploaded docs and respond to user queries. And in the model, I'll use GPT-4. And in the tools section, I will enable retrieval because I'll be uploading two files. Now, this is the GitHub profile PDF, and this one is my resume. I'll click on open. Now these two files are uploaded and I'll hit save. So now it's time that we finally test our newly created assistant. So click on the test button. So let's start by asking a question from my GitHub profile. I'll ask, give me the number of contributions I made last year GitHub. So I just realized that our assistant is not able to answer queries from the GitHub profile PDF that I uploaded over here. And the probable reason for that could be that the tool that I used to create this PDF from my GitHub profile URL took a screenshot of the web page and embedded it in a PDF. So our assistant is not able to read that image. So if I show you the file, this is the GitHub profile PDF that I uploaded, and the number of contributions is clearly mentioned over here. But for some reason, our assistant is not able to read from this PDF. So anyways, let's proceed with asking questions from my resume. So now let's ask it questions based on my resume. So I'll ask, give me information on the work that I did for Make My Trip, which is the company I worked for. So it has given me a response and it has clearly mentioned all my contributions that I made for Make My Trip. So now let's try something even more interesting. I'll ask it to give me an intro based on the information from my resume. So give me an intro based on my resume. And here you can see that it has given me a beautiful intro based on the information from my resume. And this becomes a very cool tool when you want to write a small intro based on your resume or you want to create a cover letter. So there you have it, a very quick intro of the OpenAI assistants. And in the next video, I'll be covering how you can create these assistants using code. So don't forget to subscribe and stay tuned. If you found this video helpful, don't forget to give it a thumbs up and share it with your friends. And if you would like to create your own version of the ChatGPT with voice using Python, you can check out my other video over here. Thank you.